While Great Bear Island is known for its mining, fishing, timber cutting, and farming, there is another pillar to the island's economy that is somewhat forgotten, yet its existence is in plain sight in some places. It even has many mentions within the lore. Have you guessed what I'm talking about? Hey, don't you dare look at the title of the video. Excuse me. It's the outdoors. Nature and all it has to offer was as important to the island as mining and fishing was. Whether it's the natural spring that feeds the waters flowing through Carter Dam, the animals that feed and clothe the local trappers, or the mountains scaled by the islanders and mainlanders alike, Mother Nature was a key part of Great Bear Island's economy. In this video, we will look at the more active side of Great Bear Island that involves the great outdoors. This is Outdoor Adventures on Great Bear Island. For this video, we will look at the many examples of the wild side of Great Bear Island by region and in alphabetical order. Let's start with Ash Canyon, which I recently covered in its own video. I won't be repeating everything I did in that video for that reason, so you can check it out if you want to. It will be linked in the description. Why Ash Canyon is relevant here is because of the climbing trips that would take place there. In particular, the 2 notes left behind by a local guide for a group of mainlanders tells us this is fact. Their journey would take them past the area known as the Climber's Cave and the High Meadow. On their own, the climbing guide also decided to climb to the Wolf's Jaw Overlook, which if you've ever tried to get to the gold mine for the technical backpack, you will know that is quite the climb. Just exploring Ash Canyon shows us it was a climber's paradise. There isn't a whole ton about this topic for the coastal highway region other than this poster. There are 3 of these posters that can be found in places such as Carter Dam, Field 31, and the maintenance yard. These posters seem like they were a part of a marketing campaign to show what the island had to offer. These 3 places with the posters would not only be full of mainlanders working on the island, but also tourists arriving after a flight. The poster itself suggests that the islanders were trying to convince people to come to Coastal Highway to fish. Whether it was for recreation or for work is unclear, but what is clear is that fishing is a pretty intense activity. Just ask Sutherland's bum leg. Like Ash Canyon, Desolation Point also got its own video recently where I went in depth on the buffer memories of the region. Some of those lore entries involved a planned trip by a mainlander named Manny. By using the company Deep Wild to plan his trip, he was promised he would be a new man afterwards. With a name such as Deep Wild, the trip was likely some kind of outdoor excursion. We don't have many details on what exactly Manny did during this trip, but we know what he didn't do right after. For that, you can watch the full Desolation Point video, which will be linked in the description. Additionally, Desolation Point was also featured in one of the posters alongside Coastal Highway. It doesn't tell us much about what there is to do in the region. It shows the lighthouse, which might be a sightseeing destination. I think that counts for this video in a way. So I threw Hushed River Valley into this video because it's one of the most wild places on the island. Just getting there is extremely difficult, and the terrain, cave systems, and wildlife offer a lot of opportunities. We know people went there as we can see their corpses, but we don't know what they went there for. Although with the number of corpses in the region, you'd think that maybe they were killed following the night of the first flare and its after effects. At the very least, we know that the corpse at the signal fire was there for hunting purposes. I think it's pretty obvious from the moose meat, moose satchel, and the very rare moose carcass in the region. Hushed River Valley might have been a hunter's paradise, and there's nothing more outdoorsy or adventurous than that. Mountain Town has a few interesting pieces of lore that are relevant here. First, we have Lily, Grey Mother's daughter. We know that she was an aspiring mountain climber and was training to climb the many peaks of Great Bear Island. Unfortunately, she would pass away due to an accident while climbing. It isn't known where she passed away, but we know that she frequented the climbing area of the Milton Park. Her climbing maps, given to Will in Wintermute, show she was familiar with the area. The existence of this part of the park does suggest that climbing was rather popular around Milton. It does appear that the climbing area of the park closed due to an unfortunate accident. The flavor text of the park notice warning from episode 1 says, "A weathered-looking Milton and area parks board notice, pinned to the board. Looks like it's been here a while." Suggesting that maybe Lily's accident, which happened in 1985, is what caused this area to close. Milton also has a buffer memory in the credit union that has some interesting information. This entry by Anika Longmire mentions her husband Jason and his job as a guide. I will only read the relevant parts. Jason left again this morning on another trip. Americans out of Anchorage this time, here to see just how well it gets on Great Bear. You would think they'd get enough of that at home. They will get all they can stomach, and maybe more. But at least they have the best guide on the island to show them the way. Jason Longmire is a guide of some kind, likely taking tourists around the most wild regions of Great Bear Island. The interesting part of this buffer memory is that the American tourists are interested in the island. All of Anika's buffer memory suggests the collapse has already happened, so it's interesting to see that despite the difficult economic times, there was still a fair amount of tourism from non-islanders. If you are interested in Anika's buffer memories, where she talks about the struggles she faced while living in Milton, you can check out the Buffer Memories of Mountain Town Part 1, which will be linked in the description. We all know our friendly neighborhood trapper Jeremiah. Oh wait, Jeremiah is the trapper of Trapper's Cabin in Mystery Lake, so naturally it is safe to assume he does a fair bit of hunting within the region. Not only do we know that thanks to his dialogue from episode 2, but also this note that may be talking about him. Again, I will only read the relevant parts here. After you're finished closing down the camp, make sure to check in on the Forestry Service lookout as requested. Apparently those guys think someone's been using their lookout to store hunting gear and drying old animal skins. The someone that is suspected to be breaking in and using the lookout tower is likely Jeremiah. This would suggest he does quite a bit of hunting in Mystery Lake. Either way, his knowledge of wildlife and trapping tells us that Great Bear Island is a verdant place. Jeremiah is far from the only hunter and trapper in Mystery Lake though. There is a note from episode 2 that tells us about the Mystery Lake Provincial Park in the wintertime. We're not supposed to go there off-season, but there's amazing hunting to be had near Mystery Lake. The warden usually shuts down the park for the winter. The cabins are meant for summer use, so bring warm clothes and a heavy sleeping bag. We'll break in, bag a few stags, then truck the meat out of there in a couple of weeks. Stan will pick us up along the old coastal highway. Meet me at the lake cabins on November XX. Come alone, bring beer. There's been logging in the area, so stay out of sight. Rereading this note was a surprise because of the November mention. Thanks to the prison transport manifest note in Milton, we know the approximate timing of the first flare, which is November. Whenever we see a date or month attached to a note, it is usually because of its importance. I think it's safe to assume that these hunters are probably among the bodies we can find in the region, as they would have been caught in the middle of Mystery Lake following the first flare. They had planned to sneak into the park area and do a little off-season hunting. This note and the park notice note from earlier tell us that the Mystery Lake Provincial Park is closed during the winter. As for the meat they intended to take home, it was probably to feed themselves and loved ones, as well as for bartering. With money pretty much useless in the post-collapse era, bartering was likely favored more. This continues to support the idea that the Mystery Lake region is filled with wildlife, but I do wonder if it is legal to hunt there. If Briarhouse's timber cutting operation in the area is illegal, would Jeremiah's trapping also be considered illegal? That is something I don't have the answer to. Finally, to end the section on Mystery Lake, we do have the poster similar to the one for Coastal Highway and Desolation Point. It shows a deer with the lake in the background. Historically, Mystery Lake has been used as hiking grounds even before the railroad made it even more accessible in the 1930s. If these posters were to convince tourists to spend time and money on the island, the Mystery Lake poster does a pretty good job of showing the region's natural beauty. Here is an excerpt from a related note from episode 2. The Mystery Lake area is a popular summertime destination with campers and hikers, but the area largely shuts down during the winter months due to its inaccessibility. There are no major roads connecting the area to the more populated regions in the adjoining valleys lower in the mountain chain, so the area is primarily accessed by dedicated hikers willing to make the long trek that winds along medium to advanced level traits from the nearest town of Rupert's Landing. Across all of these sources, we know that not only has the Mystery Lake region been historically popular during the summer season, but it remains popular even leading up to the Quiet Apocalypse. The region is perfect for hiking, camping, hunting, and maybe more. Although the ice fishing huts make less sense when the lore specifically clarifies that the park area, which includes Mystery Lake, is closed during the winter. One more thing. Tell me if you believe me, but I could have sworn there was another poster for Mystery Lake showing canoeing on the lake. Let me know if you remember seeing that as well. Otherwise, I might need to stop sleeping next to Rudiger's machine. Sundered Pass is probably the most obvious example of a region meant to be enjoyed through climbing. In 3 places along the road up to the upper ridge, you can find these 3 triangular shelters, which are dedicated emergency shelters for anyone in the area. Most notably, they would have been used by climbers. The Porter Soup recipe card, which I covered in my Frontier Comforts video about the recipes, has some flavor text relevant to this region. A traditional soup based on savory ptarmigan meat and fibrous vegetables. Boosts condition and encumbrance at the price of fatigue. Favored by climbers attempting to scale the peaks around Sundered Pass. The recipe originates from Sundered Pass, but more specifically from the climbers of the region. How Sutherland the trader got this recipe card, which he can trade to us in survival mode, is a mystery. He either got it from one of these climbers or from one of the many ships out at sea following the first flare. I doubt he did much mountain climbing in his days. How he got it doesn't matter much here. What matters is how important this recipe was for the climbers in the region. Sundered Pass features the high peak, which requires one to cross a treacherous path along a crevice up high in the mountains. The condition and encumbrance benefits the actual soup gives in survival mode reflects its importance for the climbers that used it. While this isn't important to the topic of this video, it is important for the region's history. In one of Rudiger's diary pages from the Last Horizon tale, he casually says,
"The mountain pass is closed."
He says that the Mountain Pass, which was the teaser name for the region before the official name was revealed, was closed. The region is closed likely because of the seismic activity, making it difficult to reach or travel through. I take this as the Sundered Pass was abandoned during this time. Due to the events of the tales and how it relied on the Langston mine, I also get the feeling that the zone of contamination was also abandoned at the time as well. The events of the tales can be estimated to about 1982, so if the zone of contamination and Sundered Pass have been abandoned since the time of the tales, they have been abandoned for several decades now. This would mean that the Sundered Pass's days as a climber's playground are long over. In this final section, we have Timberwolf Mountain, which also had a recent video dedicated to its buffer memories and other lore. In that video, I go more in depth on all of the lore entries for the region, but I will summarize the relevant parts here. Like Ash Canyon, its neighbor region, and Sundered Pass, Timberwolf Mountain was a haven for mountain climbers. The summit was an attraction from any local climbers wanting a challenge. The climber's journal page is from one of these climbers that planned to climb to the summit with a group of friends. The author had arrived early and witnessed what would turn out to be the plane crash that now litters the region. When looking at the note, there are actual dates telling us the plane crashed in the middle of the night the morning of September 6th. The plane crash is unrelated to the first flare, as we know it occurred in November, but this tells us that even leading up to the Quiet Apocalypse, the region still attracted some die-hard climbers. As you can see, outdoor adventures of all sorts, from fishing and hunting to mountain climbing and hiking, were a big part of the island's economy. They would bring in food to feed the locals, provide a distraction from the grim reality of island life, and tourism that would fuel interest in the area. For over 100 years, Great Bear Island saw its natural beauty being stripped and destroyed for profit, so it's nice to see that some people cared for it. I can't say that what the forest talkers do in the name of environmentalism is entirely justified when they have admitted to destruction and crime in order to protect Mother Nature. You could also argue that fishing and hunting could be as destructive as mining and logging, but these examples at least show some respect to nature. Jeremiah definitely demonstrates some respect for it, as there needs to be balance. As for Last Resort and Hibernia, they do not fall under this group, as profit is their main concern. Enjoying what nature has to offer in a respectful manner is above all most important when stepping outside. Even if it's as simple as a stroll around your hometown, hopefully the air is clean enough, the flowers are thriving, and the birds are singing. I may be pulling from personal experience here, but I can't stress it enough how important it is to keep the wild side of our world as wild as possible. We can be a part of it to enjoy what it offers, or we can be the reason why it disappears. So enjoy your walk or hike, hunt responsibly, and enjoy the view. The nature around us is the reason we are here in the first place. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure to leave a like for the algorithm so I can keep making them.